Hi, this is Mark from Wiki Design. In this Elementor Pro tutorial, I'm going to show you how I created this really cool iPhone call to action section right here. We recently had a client who wanted this type of functionality on the website, so I figured I'll make a video and show you step by step on how I was able to pull this off. So in this tutorial, I'm going to leave timestamps in the description below if you want to jump around, but what we're going to do first is we're going to work on the phone mockup here. And after we do the iPhone mockup, I'm going to show you 3 different ways that you can achieve this type of layout right here. So let's just jump into the tutorial and get started. The first thing we need to do is this phone right here is actually just an image of an iPhone with a white background. Then this right here is a Lottie Animation. So we're going to have 2 assets we need to gather before we can get started. And that's the iPhone and this little Lottie Animation. So then right underneath here is just using the regular Elementor widgets to, add in the text right here. The website I recommend for mockups like this is right here called shots.so. This is a really cool website. You can see right here there's all different types of ways that you can do iPhones, tablets, desktops, all this kind of cool stuff. But let's go ahead and just click on the phone right here. And you could just choose any of these. So if you just choose like this one, the iPhone 15 Pro, that looks good to start out with, but we need to make some adjustments. And the very first one is, in this case, if you go back here, I don't have a shadow on this. I just want to have it kind of floating. So we can remove the shadow. Then if you click right here underneath frame, what we need to do is make it transparent. So you can see right here, this background is all transparent. And then what I'm going to do is now use a little image of like a white square and fill this up inside the screenshot. So you see right here where it says choose image, what you can do is upload your own image if you want. So if you have like a specific screenshot, you can always add that in here. But what I'm going to do is just add in this little, let me pull this up right here. I just created a little square like 100 by 100 of like a white square. So I wanted to have it where the tool is going to fill this up with white. Like right here, it needs to be filled up with white, not transparent. So I'm just going to go ahead and upload that. And now you can see right here, it has a white background. And that's all you really need to do on this tool. Now what we can do is export this mockup. So if you go underneath where it says mockup, you can see right here, they have these different filters. You can go ahead and just choose the PNG, and the 2x is good because it's going to output it right here at 3840, which is huge. But we're going to go into Photoshop and shrink this all down. And then I'm going to show you how I like to convert it to a WebP. So just go ahead and click this right here where it says 2x is PNG. And here we are inside of Photoshop. And if I just go here, I realize that the resolution is actually at 1920 by 1440. So it didn't quite bring it in the way that the tool said it was going to be, but that's fine. What we need to do now is, there's a couple different ways you can do this, but what I like to do is go to the layer right here, because you can see it's just this phone. I like to hold down Control and just click on the layer. So I'm on a PC, I just hit Control and click that. Then what I like to do is just hit Control C, and then I'm going to create a new document. Let me pull this over here. And you can see right here, this is just now going to pull in the width of the whole entire iPhone, without anything on the edges. Then what you can do is unclick this. So you want to make sure it has the checkerboard back here so it's transparent. And I already know that the image should only be around 300 pixels wide. So something along those lines should be good. So if I go ahead and just change the width to 300, you're going to want to make sure, let me go back into the website. This right here, if you know your container is only going to be about 300 pixels, you want to make sure that it's small here because you're loading up an image. So you want it to be as optimized as possible. So if we go back into here, now you can just save this out as a PNG. And then I'm going to show you how you can save this as a WebP and make it even smaller. And this is the tool I like to use to make my images as optimized as possible, and that's using Google's Squish app right here. So what you do is just click and drag an image in here, and then you convert it to WebP and make your images even smaller. So I'm going to click and drag that PNG we just created in Photoshop into here. And if you look right down here on the bottom left, the size of the file is 30 kilobytes. But what you want to do is click over here where it says WebP under compress, and then you could make this as big as you can before you start to lose any resolution. So if you kind of go in here, you could zoom in, you could see there's like no quality of, there's no difference in the quality right here. So if you just go ahead and hit download right here, we went from 30 kilobytes down to like 4.8. So just go ahead and download that. And now what we can do is save that to your computer, and we can now download that Lottie animation right here, and then we're going to be able to jump into Elementor and get all of this started. Now what we're going to do is download that little checkmark animation, and this is all using Lottie's. So if you go to this website, LottieFiles.com, make sure that you set up an account first. Then what you can do is search for animation. So if we just type in something like checkmark, you're going to see there's tons of different variations of a checkmark that people have created. So that's what's really cool about this platform, is there's a lot of cool variations. So if we just go ahead and click something like this one right here, now what we're going to do is change these colors to kind of match our branding. So what's cool is inside LottieFiles, they now give you the option to change all of these colors. So what you need to do first is click right here where it says Edit Animation. Now it's going to open up the Lottie editor, and this is going to give you the option right here on the right to change some colors. So as you can see, you can just click right here where it says Unique Colors, and then you can just type in your color right here. So if we just go ahead and type in our blue, you can see that it's automatically changing that to our branded blue. Then you can change any of these other things over here if you want, but let's just go ahead and keep this really simple. And this is really important. You're going to want to make sure in this situation, if I go back here, you want this to be like a square so it fits in here. You don't want a Lottie animation that has a bunch of space at the top and bottom. So that's what this is right here. The dimensions, you're going to want to make sure that this is probably a square. And then that's it. You're just going to go ahead, hit save. Then it's going to pop up in a minute, and then you can download the Lottie animation. And you can see right here, if you see this button right here, it says Lottie JSON, you're going to want to click and just hit download. So that's going to download it to your computer, and now we can upload that inside of Elementor, and it will play this little animation. Okay, so here we are inside of Elementor, and let me show you how I structured everything up on this page. So the first thing is you might want to get rid of this title. So depending on how you have your website, under page layout, under the settings, I like to go and just make sure everything's Elementor full width. That way it gets rid of that header right there. Now what we need to do is create one main container, and then we're going to have the cell phone sit on the left and the content on the right. So what we need to do is you could just go ahead and click this container, and then let's go ahead and set the VH, so the mid height. You can change that to something along those lines. Let's just go to 100 just to keep this simple. Now we're going to go ahead and add a gradient to this background. So you just go underneath Style, Background, click this button Gradient. And let's start with our blue color, and then we're going to end with our white. So you can see right here, it's going to transition into a white right there. So far this is a good step. Now what we need to do is add the two containers that are sitting next to each other. So let me go ahead and pull this up. So this is going to be one big container right here with the phone. Then this will be another container right here with the three boxes. And then each one of these are just going to be sitting by themselves. So let's go ahead and just get the structure set up. And I'm going to do the phone first, and then we're going to move on to these because, like I said in the beginning, each one of these I did differently. So you can see three different ways that you can pull off this look. So now we have our main container set up, and let's make sure that before we go any further that you have a similar situation where you have it boxed on the main container, and then I'm forcing it to be 960 pixels wide. So you can see right here, I want to make sure that the main container doesn't go any wider than that. I don't want it to go like full width or anything like that. You're going to want to make sure you have it kind of boxed in. That way you have full control over all of these containers. So once you have that, what I recommend first is click the down direction right here, and let's just go ahead and make sure everything's going to be centered. So then that way when we throw in stuff, it will be centered to this container. Now you can go up here and just click in a new container. So you can see right here, it's going to automatically center where we want to have the phone. So on the right side, I'm just going to go ahead and make sure I give it a label. Now what we need to do underneath the iPhone one, go ahead and choose full width. What that's going to do is make sure that it's going to scale correctly. Then I already know it's around 32% in order for the phone to kind of fit in here, pretty snug. So you're going to have the phone here, and then all the content's going to be right here on the right. And then what you're going to want to do is under the column, we can select vertical down, and we want to make sure everything is centered right here. And then what I like to do is go underneath advanced, and let's give this 0 padding. So when you do that, you're not going to have any padding right here. And let's go ahead, while we're in here, I'm going to choose the mid height to be something like 800. So now you can visually see this is where the phone is going to be sitting right inside of this container right here. Now we're going to be adding the phone as a background image, and then that way you're going to have full control over how it's going to look. So go underneath Style on that container and just click this button. And now we're going to upload that image that we just created inside of that mockup. And once you bring it in, it probably will look like this, so we need to make a few adjustments. Let's go ahead and keep the resolution at full, which is nice. The position, you're going to want to choose center, so that's going to center it to that frame right there. You can keep attached to default. You want to make sure this is no repeat, because you saw what happened, it automatically is going to repeat it. And then in most situations like this, you're going to probably want to choose contain. That's going to contain it to the width of this whole section right here. So far this is a really good start. Now we can start to add in the Lottie animation and that text. And then, like I said, we're going to move on over here. So now that you have your Lottie animation ready to go, let's go ahead and upload it. So you're just going to want to make sure you go to Elementor and bring in the Lottie widget right here. Then when you do that, just click this button to upload the JSON file you just downloaded. Once you do that, you should see it automatically come into your viewport and it will start to play the animation. Then under settings, let's go ahead and make sure that we have this loop so you can keep seeing the animation. And you could just, depend on which animation you have, you may need it to go slower, so you can just click and drag the speed down. So let's go ahead and just keep something like that. Then over here underneath style is where you're going to go ahead and start to change the width of this thing. So you can make it where it's something along those lines right there. Then what we're going to do is just bring in a header and maybe some text below it. And what you can do is just change the header into something like a p tag. So now you can give it some information, so something like loan received. And underneath style, you can go ahead, of course, change out whatever you want. Let's give it an orange color. Let's make it kind of bold. So something like that. And while we're in here, let's just make it a little bit bigger. Just something along those lines. Then you're going to want to make sure you have this centered. So it's important that you always have all of these things centered, because when you start to scale down, you're going to want to make sure it's always kind of locked into the middle. Now we can bring in something like a regular text widget. So I'll just go in here and just bring in like the text editor. Same thing. Let's just paste in some information like Wiki Design secured your funding. Then what you can do is go like this. And you can see in this situation, we're definitely going to have some issues with padding. So let's go ahead and give it some padding of, let's say, maybe 25 pixels. So 25 left, 25 right. So you can see there'll always be some padding right here. So in this situation, we didn't really need the padding, but down here, it looks like we might need some padding. So now you have your phone all ready to go. You can go ahead, hit update, and let's see how this looks on the front end of the website. And you can see right here, it's pulling in the animation. Everything seems to be working pretty good so far. So now I'm going to walk you through how I was able to add these 3 sections right here and kind of give you 3 different variations. So now let's go ahead and add the container section to the right and make sure everything is lined up. I can see right here on the main container, we want to make sure that we have it set to right now, because we're going to be pulling in that other container. So go ahead and click on the direction of right. And now let's go ahead and right click and hit add new container. And as you can see, when you do that, it's going to add the new container right here. So if you remember, the iPhone is at 32%. So we need to make sure that it equals 100%. So let's go ahead and over here, just type in 68. So 68 plus 32, that's going to give you the 100%. And if you have this gap in between, what you need to do is go underneath your container right here, and where it says gaps, just type in 0. So now you can see right here, these 2 containers are going to be bumped up to each other. And that's what we want. And this new container, let's go ahead and give it a name of something like content. And now what we need to do is pull in 3 new containers in here. But first, let's go ahead and make sure everything is going to get centered. So you click on the main content one. You can click the down button and then centered right here. So now it's going to automatically center these things. So for reference, you could just duplicate this like 3 different times. So you can see this is how the 3 sections are going to be called out. We will change these up. Like I said, each one of these are going to be like its own unique way to do it. So now that you have your 3 new containers in here, I recommend you give them the unique layer name. So in this case, I'm just calling it step 1, step 2, and step 3. So now let's go ahead into step 1, and then let's give it a white background. So if you click on that main container, go underneath here and just click on the color as white. And now in this example, you can see we have the rounded corners on the top right and the top bottom. So if you go underneath border, you can go ahead and give it a 10 and 10. So you can see right here, 10 on the bottom and 10 on the right here. So it's just going to be just the rounded corners here, and then this is all going to be flat. So in this first example, I'm going to show you how I was able to pull this off. And this right here is using 2 inner containers. So this right here where the number is, that's its own container. And then this is its own container right here. In order to pull off this perfect square right here, what we need to do is pull in a container, and then I'm going to force it to make sure that it never grows. So let me show you how to do that. What we need to do is while you're underneath step 1, just pull in a new container. So just click and drag that in there. This is really important. You're going to want to make sure that the full width of that new container is at full width, not at the boxed. So now you go ahead and just give it a width of 90 pixels and a height of 90 pixels. So it doesn't look like a square yet until we throw in the number, and then we can use some settings inside of here to make sure it doesn't grow. Then underneath here, just justify the content. So when you throw the number in, it will be centered and centered. And let's actually change it to the orange now. So if you go underneath that container, click here, underneath style, background, let's give it the orange color. And then we need to make sure we have a border radius of something like 50 pixels. You're going to want to make sure that it's the same across the board so it will stay a circle. Now what we need to do is just click and drag in a header or whatever widget you want. So in this case, I'm just going to throw in a 1 right here, and then it's going to automatically go in the center. And let's change out the styling right here. Let's change the color to white, and let's make it a little bit bigger. And then you can see right here, when I do that, it's gonna do that right there. So you're gonna wanna make sure that you don't go too big. So in this situation, something like 60 pixels should be good. Now you're gonna wanna make sure you click on that container. And like I said, it's good to name these things as you go. So let's go ahead and name that as one circle. And one other thing I recommend is click on that container. And if you go underneath advanced, this button right here will make sure it doesn't like grow. So underneath advanced on that new container, just do that. So now what we can do is add the container next to it with the content. So you can right click on that one you just created, one circle, click add new content, and that's going to automatically add it right there. Now what we can do is click in some widgets in here. So you can just throw in something like that. In this situation, I just had it say get approved. You can do something like that. And then I just have some basic text below it. So I want to show you how that will work. So you just click and drag in another text editor and just paste in some content. So like I said, if this grows like this, there's one setting that you're going to need to change. And that is underneath the step container. So this whole container right here where it has the white background, there's one button right here, and you're going to want to make sure you align your items to the center. So when you do that, it's going to make sure that that container doesn't grow. So that's how you can get the very first one to work when you have 2 containers sitting next to each other. So now let's jump into the second one and show you how you can have it where the left one is a container similar to this, but then the right one is actually just a widget. So it's not actually this, it's not another container. And that one's very simple. What I recommend is just duplicating this one. So go to step 1, right click and hit duplicate, and let's just call this one step 2. So you could delete the other one you created just as like a placeholder. And then start to change out these things. So if we go and change this to a 2. So instead of having this container right here, what you could do is just delete that. And then in this situation, this could all just be one big widget as a text editor. So you can go here, just throw it next to there, and you can see on the right side, if I change this one to say 2 circle, that's why I recommend it's always good to kind of name the layers. So we're in step 2. We have this container right here that's not going to grow, and then now we have a text editor right here. Then what you could do is just create some content right here. I'm just going to paste in what I have. So I have an H2 tag of apply now with some random text. So you could also just do it here on the front end, highlight that as a H2, whatever it may be, And then that's how that can work. So you probably noticed that there's, padding issues between the two. So depending on how much padding you want, you can always go into the main container. You could change out these gaps right here to make it smaller, whatever kind of fits your style. But I wanted to show 3 different variations of ways you could pull this type of stuff off. So the third one I'm going to show you is kind of a completely different approach. And instead of having these in its own container and using, the code, what this is actually an SVG image. And so that way you don't have to worry about anything weird with fonts not loading correctly or scaling issues. This will always kind of scale down as if it's an image. So in this situation, what I did is I just created this really simple 3-circle logo inside of Illustrator. And then I just exported it as an SVG. Then here are the settings I use. I just made sure that any fonts were converted to outlines, the decimal set to 3, minify, response, kind of standard. So just hit OK. And now you can upload that to your website, and then we can use it inside of this layout right here. Now that you have your SVG image, what we can do now is when you're selecting on step 3, just go ahead and click in a image widget. And when you do that, you can see you could pull in the SVG you just created. So I like this because it's only like 1 kilobyte. So it's not going to add any extra bloat to the website or anything. Then what we need to do is underneath the image itself, for the styling, make sure that you change the width to pixels. And then you can change it to whatever is going to look good. So maybe something like 110. And then what I recommend is select the container that you already created up here in like step 1 and just kind of duplicate it. It's a lot of using trying to start from scratch. So right click on your step 3 and just paste in that new container. So depending on how you have your step 3 set up, it should look like this. You do want to make sure that the row is set to horizontal, center, and then center. So if I were to choose one of these layouts, personally, I would probably go with number 3. And then I like the number 2 and then the number 1. So I like number 3 because it's using images instead of having to rely on the width of these containers. Because sometimes, depending on if the user zoomed in or they have different dimensions or anything along those lines, it can kind of throw things off like this. So it might look simple on the front end, but sometimes these things are kind of complicated. So that's why I recommend maybe doing the image approach first and then kind of go from there. Then the very last step is, you probably noticed that there's like this gap right here. So a real easy fix would be if you go back into your content right here, this whole container, you could just do like a negative margin. So you could just select that. And then where the left is right here, you could just click and just kind of drag it until it goes behind the phone. And if you notice, the phone is actually below it. So what we need to do is change the Z index of the phone. So select the phone right here, go underneath advanced, and then give it something like 20, and then give the content like a 10. That way you know that the Z index is going to work correctly. And the last step is how I was able to just pull in these little animations. Very simple to do inside of Elementor. So if you look underneath each one of these steps I created, if you go underneath advanced, and then you go to motion effects, I just have this up right here, entrance animation, fade in up, and I just have like a slight delay of 400 milliseconds on each one of these. So it's the same thing right here, just go underneath motion effects for each one of these. And then what I did here is I had these fade in a little bit slower. So if you look underneath the Lottie Animation, motion effects, I'm just doing a fade in, and then I do it at about 1,000 milliseconds. So it'll be a 1 second delay. So if I refresh the page, you'll see these come in immediately, and then about a second, these will fade in. So that's how you could pull off something really simple with just using the built-in effects inside of Elementor. And then from here, what I recommend is go ahead inside of your different device modes, tablet, mobile, and just kind of style everything up. So I'll show you how I have the demo set up. So you can see right here, the main container that it's sitting in, I'm switching from horizontal, so it would look like that normally. I'm just forcing it to go down on tablet. So you can see it's real easy to change out these things once you start to get into the stacking mode, because you can just put the phone on the top, and then you can just have your containers like this. And then on mobile, same thing. You can just go ahead. If you want to shrink the phone size, you can go ahead and just change that right here. and change out the height right here. So you can see it gives you a lot of controls, you know, inside of your different mobile settings when you start to use, you know, the width and the height of everything, because you want to be able to have full control over how your phone's going to look on mobile devices, whatever it may be. And then you can see right here, I just kind of have everything stacked. And so you could see I have this right here. I still have it at the 90 pixels. I made sure that these things are stacking correctly. So that's how I was able to pull off this really cool iPhone animation inside of Elementor. Make sure you give this video a like, subscribe to this YouTube channel, and hit that bell to receive notifications when I release new tutorials like this. Again, this is Mark from Wiki Design.